The story was begun with a doctor, Victor Frankenstein, who tried to create a monster and successfully brought his experiment to life. However, angry citizens surrounded the castle. The doctor was surprised by the presence of his master, Count Dracula. Dracula wanted to kill Frankenstein because he refused to follow his plan. Frankenstein was trying to run from the castle. Frankenstein was cornered. Then he asked his assistant, Igor, to help him, but Igor refused because Dracula had already paid him. Frankenstein found the sword behind him and drew the sword at Dracula. Dracula revealed his real identity as he could not die. The monster created by Frankenstein, who saw this, immediately broke free and slammed Dracula. The beast flew to a windmill with Frankenstein's body. Arriving at the windmill, the mob burned down the windmill and tried to kill the monster. Dracula's troops went to the windmill. Unfortunately, they were too late because Frankenstein's monster was already on fire and fell first. A year later, monster hunter Gabriel Van Helsing travels to Notre Dame de Paris. Van Helsing saw himself in a poster when he heard a scream. He headed towards the source of the screams near the bridge. Van Helsing saw a dead young woman. Then he followed the trail and entered a cathedral. He met a giant, Dr. Jekyll. Van Helsing tried to catch it, but the monster just hit it. Van Helsing attempted to shoot it but missed and used his tools to injure the beast. Dr. Jekyll lifted Helsing, but luckily he could escape and cut off the monster's hand. Dr. Jekyll threw Van Helsing from the rooftop, but Van Helsing swiftly used a rope gun, made it down safely, and pulled the monster, and finally, Dr. Jekyll died. When Van Helsing arrived at the Vatican, he who remembered nothing before was found crawling out the steps of a church, hoping to earn pardon for his forgotten sins and regain his memory. There, the priest suggested that Van Helsing should have a week's vacation in hell. The priest then took him to the basement. In the cellar, Van Helsing got a task to go to Transylvania, destroy Dracula, and protect Anna and Vulcan Valerius, the last of an ancient Romanian family. The priest also explained that the Valerius family left a logo identical to Van Helsing's ring. Van Helsing met a friar and weapons inventor named Karl to accompany him to Transylvania. He told Karl to prepare the goods and weapons they would carry. In Transylvania, Prince Vulcan froze in a log to lure the werewolf out. When the werewolf came out, they tried to catch the creature, and Vulcan finally saw it. But the basket that snared the werewolf fell, and the werewolf could break free. The werewolf chased Vulcan's sister Anna until she was squeezed into the cliff's edge. Vulcan managed to protect Anna but fell into a deep river gorge. The werewolf managed to bite him in the process. Van Helsing and Karl arrived in Transylvania. They rested in a village, but the villagers didn't seem to welcome them until the residents' elders held him. Suddenly, the vampires attacked the town. Van Helsing quickly joins Anna's fight with Dracula's brides, Verona, Marischka, and Alira. The vampire tried to pull Anna, but Van Helsing helped her. Van Helsing tried to shoot the vampire, but he failed to hit the vampire, and the vampire flew as the sun rose. However, there was one vampire who was still in the well, and when the sun covered the well, a vampire immediately came out and pulled Anna. Van Helsing, who saw this, immediately shot an arrow that hit one of the vampire's legs, and Anna survived. The vampire approached Van Helsing, and Van Helsing's arrow managed to hit her, and she fell into a house. Elsewhere, Anna met a vampire named Marischka. Marischka immediately attacked Anna. The vampire that had fallen had now risen again and could heal himself, which confused Van Helsing about how to kill her. Then he saw the holy water in a church. Back at Anna, Anna was cornered by two vampires. Luckily, Van Helsing arrived to help Anna. He fights with Marischka, and finally, Van Helsing manages to shoot Marischka so that she is stuck on the top of a building and eventually dies. The residents cheered and said that Dracula would take revenge because Van Helsing killed one of his brides. As a reward, Anna treats Van Helsing to a drink. At the castle, Count Dracula scolded his brides for their defeat. Dracula said his goal was to live forever. That's why Dracula needed a monster made by Frankenstein that the residents burned. Dracula's brides disagreed about it, but Dracula convinced them. That night, Van Helsing and Anna entered Valerius' castle. Van Helsing offered his help, but Anna refused. Van Helsing kept asking how to kill Dracula and tried to negotiate with Anna, but to no avail. Anna did not intend to cooperate yet. Then, they planned to hunt Dracula. The next day, Van Helsing drugged Anna because she was annoyed. Anna woke up and saw that everything around her had gone out. Anna was looking for Van Helsing, and suddenly she heard something, which turned out to be an open window. Anna went to the window and saw traces on the floor. Anna was tracing the trail, and it turned out that it was Vulcan, his brother. Vulcan visited Anna to warn her of Dracula's plans, but transformed into a werewolf and escaped. Vulcan became a werewolf when he saved Anna from falling into a ravine. Van Helsing immediately chased Velkin to the village, and suddenly while sneaking, he met the village head. The head of this village also took him to a grave, but suddenly the village head tried to kill Van Helsing, but he fended him off. Van Helsing, who realized something, looked down, and it turned out that a werewolf was trying to pounce on him. When Van Helsing was about to shoot the creature, Anna stopped him to shoot his brother. They both got into a fight. Anna said it was his brother, and Dracula had a werewolf antidote. Finally, Van Helsing and Anna worked together to find Anna's Velkin. In Dracula's castle, Igor started doing experiences for Dracula. Van Helsing and Anna head to Frankenstein's castle, which Frankenstein used to conduct experiments. Van Helsing guesses the connection between Frankenstein's death and the death of Anna's father at sea. Velkin returned to Dracula's lair. Velkin was shocked when he learned that Dracula had killed his father. Velkin got angry and started attacking Dracula, and Dracula pushed him away and put him in the laboratory chair. Velkin swore that his sister would not fail to kill Dracula, and finally, Velkin became Dracula's experimental material. Anna found out that Dracula was using her brother for experiments. While Van Helsing saw lots of hanging cocoons, it turned out they were the children of Dracula. They stumble upon Dracula's plan to duplicate Frankenstein's experiments to give life to thousands of his undead children, using Velkin as a conduit. Dracula's experiments produced an electric current that flowed into his children's cocoons. The curious Van Helsing tried to open one of the cocoons and saw the results of the marriage between vampires. And behind Anna, it turned out that there was a vampire child's hand trying to get out. Dracula gave power again to the cocoons until they were released and Dracula's children were born. Dracula and his brides were happy. Dracula then orders his brides to teach them how to find food. Dracula's children scattered in various directions, and Van Helsing tried to shoot them. Dracula, who saw that, immediately chased Van Helsing to Valerius' castle. Van Helsing was now face to face with Dracula, while Anna entered the laboratory and found her brother being tortured for experiments. In the village, Dracula's children and Dracula's brides slaughtered the entire town. Van Helsing sank his silver stake, but it didn't do anything. Dracula could still live. In the laboratory, Anna tried to free Velkin and climbed a rope, but unfortunately, she was caught with the Dwergi or Dracula's children. Anna, who was climbing up, dropped the Dwergis into the pool. Igor panicked and said that they must not lose the children of Dracula. Dracula removed his silver stake and told Van Helsing that they had the same history somehow. During the fray, Dracula introduced himself, whose real name was Count Vladislaus Dracula. He was born in 1422 and died in 1462. Dracula confronted Van Helsing, whom he regards as an ancient rival. Anna tried to free Velkin, but Velkin asked Anna to let him go because he would turn into a wolf. And sure enough, Velkin suddenly grabbed Anna and changed into a werewolf. The atmosphere in the village was very chaotic, but it didn't last long because Dracula's children exploded. Verona and Alira cried because they lost their children. Van Helsing, who had been in Frankenstein's castle earlier, heard Velkin's screams, immediately caught up with him, and threw him across. When Van Helsing suddenly tried to cross the road, the werewolf bothered him until the rope broke. Luckily, Van Helsing survived. In the village, a girl got a kiss from Carl for saving the town. The two of them finally became acquainted. On the other hand, Van Helsing walked somewhere with Anna. Anna explained that Dracula had been stuck in chains to kill Dracula, but Dracula could not die. Anna and Van accidentally ended up standing, eventually falling and finding a place or cave. Van Helsing explored the cave and found a footprint. Van Helsing made a high guess about the creature he was following, which turned out to be the trail of Frankenstein's monster. Van Helsing and Anna escaped and stumbled upon Frankenstein's monster at the windmill. They fought with the beast and finally succeeded in taking it down. Anna ordered Van Helsing to kill her, but Helsing refused because Frankenstein's monster revealed that he was the key to Frankenstein's machine to give life to Dracula's brood. Then, the beast finally fainted. Eavesdropping on their discussion, Velkin escaped with this new information. Van Helsing finally brought Frankenstein's monster to Rome. In the middle of the Van Helsing and his crew were ambushed by the brides of Dracula and Velkin, near Budapest. Van Helsing got ready with his weapon. Suddenly Mariska picked him up, but Mariska was not strong, so she dropped Van Helsing. Helsing was stuck on a broken bridge. He tried to escape but was again attacked by the vampires. The horse-drawn carriage fell into a ravine, and the two vampires immediately jumped in and chased after the horse-drawn carriage thinking Van Helsing was still in it. And when it was opened, it turned out the horse carriage was empty. Then the vampire who opened the carriage was shocked because it turned out that the contents of the carriage were explosives, vampire deterrents, and the actual train that carried Frankenstein's monster was on Anna. Anna reunited with Van Helsing, but suddenly, a werewolf approached them. Their horse-drawn carriage slid and reached the edge of the cliff. Luckily, Frankenstein's monster helped and saved them. Suddenly, the werewolf appeared again until they got involved in an accident. The following day, Anna woke up and found Velkin already lying down. Velkin finally died. Anna immediately scolded Van Helsing, and when Van Helsing opened her clothes, it turned out Van Helsing had been bitten. Anna went away, and she met Dracula's bride named Alira. Alira kidnapped her and offered to trade her for the monster at a masquerade ball. Van Helsing agreed with it. Frankenstein's monster got angry, but Van Helsing drugged him. He was hidden in a cemetery. Van Helsing met Dracula at a masquerade ball when Dracula was dancing with Anna. Van Helsing and Carl had been lurking where Dracula was. They started executing their plan. By hanging above, Van Helsing caught their attention and Carl suddenly incinerated Dracula. Then Van Helsing saw Anna. It turned out that the castle was Dracula's place and those who attended the party were vampires. Long story short, Monster Frankenstein was captured and Dracula's troops were chasing Van Helsing. Helsing ran to the roof and met up with Carl. They left a bomb and finally jumped into the river. The bomb exploded and crushed the creature to the bone. They fell into a river. They also saw Frankenstein's monster brought by the Dwergi, and even Van Helsing and his friend could not catch up with him because the gate blocked them. Helsing swore that he would save the Frankenstein monster. Suddenly, the wolf disease of Helsing flared up. They returned to Frankenstein's laboratory and found nothing there. Finally, they returned to Valerius' castle. Carl explained that Dracula was the son of Valerius the Elder. When he was killed in 1462 by the left hand of God, Dracula made a pact with the devil and lived again. Because of collaboration with the devil, the Valerius family was finally punished and could not enter heaven. Valerius was told to kill Dracula and gain salvation for his entire family. Then they were looking for a nest of Dracula. It turned out the door was in front of their eyes. Van Helsing used the relic given to her by the priest and finally succeeded in opening a path to Dracula's castle. They both jumped through the door, but here again, Van Helsing's illness flared up. They continued their journey, and on the way, they met Igor. Van Helsing tried to stick his device into the wall so Igor could not escape. When Van Helsing tried to kill Igor, he suddenly heard screams from Frankenstein's monster. Van Helsing tried to open the prison door, but unfortunately, Frankenstein was brought up first. They found the monster, who revealed that Dracula possessed a cure for a werewolf because only a werewolf could kill him. Van Helsing was confused about how a vampire had an antidote to kill the wolf. Then Carl explained that only a werewolf could kill Dracula, and they planned to heal Van Helsing. Dracula came to his castle and saw Frankenstein's monster that would be used as experimental material. Van Helsing, who knew about it, immediately looked for Dracula and challenged him to fight. Igor showed Carl and Anna the cure, then pushed them both, locking them in the room. Van Helsing, who turned into a werewolf, attacked and killed the Dwergi there. Back to Anna, who was looking at the cure, Alira suddenly came. Anna threw the cure container filled with hot liquid and tried to free herself. But again, Alira blocked it and the two of them fought. Carrying the cure, Carl reached a bridge and was suddenly intercepted by Igor. Van Helsing attempted to free Frankenstein's monster, but unfortunately, before being released, the beast was struck by lightning, bringing Dracula's children to life. Dracula, who saw that there was Van Helsing above, immediately changed and attacked Van Helsing. Van Helsing crashed, and the Frankenstein monster was hit by lightning again, resurrecting Dracula's children instead. Frankenstein's monster finally broke free, and he hung onto a cable, and the line hit Igor until Igor fell and died. Meanwhile, Anna fought with Alira until she got bruised when Alira was about to bite her. Suddenly, a Frankenstein monster appeared and saved her. Dracula and Van Helsing turned into their bestial forms in battle. Van Helsing managed to break Dracula's wings so that Dracula returned to his human form, and Van Helsing sharpened his claws. In his werewolf form, Van Helsing managed to strangle Dracula, and suddenly, Van Helsing changed back to his human form because the moon was closed. While both briefly returned to their human forms, Dracula revealed that Van Helsing killed him and offered to restore his memory, but Van Helsing refused. It seemed that history was being played again. The moon appeared again, and Van Helsing turned back into a werewolf and killed Dracula. Anna arrived and injected the cure into Van Helsing but was killed by him. The next day, Van Helsing and Carl burnt Anna's body on a cliff overlooking the sea. Frankenstein's monster was living freely. When Van Helsing looked up, he saw Anna's spirit reuniting with her family in heaven. So, what do you think about this movie? Leave it in the comments below, and if you like the video, please like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you in the next video.